Welcome to the SAFeTy Chronicles, exploring how to keep people and pets safe from the cycle of interpersonal violence. I am your host, Allie Phillips, founder and CEO of Sheltering Animals and Families Together, the SAFeTy Program, a nonprofit organization working with domestic violence shelters to eliminate the pet housing barrier to safety. As the founder, I have led the global movement in helping domestic violence shelters create on-site pet housing while elevating the criminal justice response to how animal abuse links to crimes against people. I am a former prosecuting attorney, internationally recognized legal expert and public speaker, award-winning author, and advocate for protecting vulnerable victims. In this podcast, we will explore how and why animals are harmed in the cycle of family violence and the human-animal bond that keeps victims in harm's way with their pets. Guest speakers and I will share strategies for shelters and professionals working to safeguard survivors, why pet-inclusive sheltering is life-saving, and safety tips for those who need help. None of the content will be graphic. If you are in harm's way, please contact your nearest domestic violence shelter or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. So I am coming to you from my new office, which is in progress because I made the move to Lake Michigan, which I have loved coming here for I don't know how many years. And I finally made the move and I'm getting my office in place. So here we go. We are going to get this latest podcast episode off the ground, and I'm really glad that you're here. So if you haven't subscribed to this podcast, would you just click the subscribe button and like this? And if you know of anybody who is interested in this topic, whether they work for a domestic violence shelter, they work for like a health and human service agency or an animal protection agency, maybe you know a legislator or a lobbyist, or an attorney like me, please share this with them because I want to talk about a topic that I have to tell you, it just baffles me as an attorney that pets are still considered property under the law. And that is in all 50 states here in the US. Did you know that? So basically, your dog Bailey is treated like a refrigerator. Now, as an attorney with over 31 years in the field of criminal prosecution, helping human and animal victims of crime, this is a ridiculous aspect of the law that sadly the United States does not seem determined to change anytime soon. So I've been an attorney for over 31 years, and for almost all of that time, I have watched the animal welfare community advocate for laws to recognize animals as sentient beings. You know, beings just like you and me that feel pain and feel emotions. That's what that means. Now, currently, Oregon is the only U.S. state with a law that recognizes animals as having the capacity to experience pain, stress, and fear. So kudos to you, Oregon. This law came into effect in 2013, and what it does is it allows courts to consider an animal's sentient interests when making legal rulings, but they are still deemed property. So at one time, women and children were also deemed property, and that changed. So when is this going to change? When are we going to see movement? So this movement to recognize animals as sentient beings started when criminal animal protection laws were being passed state by state. All states now have felony animal protection laws to protect animals from really egregious forms of harm, which to a small extent recognizes that animals feel pain and should not be treated inhumanely. However, they are still deemed property. And I got to tell you, I scratched my head over this one. Other countries have been far more progressive than the United States by recognizing animals as sentient beings in their laws. Austria, We have one territory in Australia, the Australian Capital Territory, that has recognized animals as sentient beings. Belgium, France, New Zealand, Quebec in Canada, Spain, and the United Kingdom. And these laws require humans to account for animal welfare, for the pain, for the stress, for the fear that animals can feel at the hands of humans, and generally not treat Bailey like a refrigerator. That's what these laws do. So why am I talking about this today? If you have a companion animal, you already know that your companion experiences pain and emotions. Oh my goodness, like literally before coming down here to my office, Stella and Rudy, two of my cats, were having some sort of emotional exchange. Stella gave Rudy a look, and Rudy started doing his meow that is basically a cry. I'm looking at them like, what sort of emotion is going on between them? Okay. I take them to the vet. They don't like being in a carrier. They don't like being in the car. It's for their health and well-being that I do this. And God forbid we have to take a blood sample or anything like that. They don't like pain. Okay, so we all know this by having pets in our home. And by recognizing the sentient nature of companion animals, all animals, is important for domestic violence shelters in helping survivors with pets, for legislators and lobbyists when working on legislation, and the court system when dealing with pet custody issues that could be entwined with domestic violence control and abuse dynamics. Okay, there's a lot of facets to start recognizing animals as sentient beings. So discussions as pets not being property has gone as far back as my legal career. And one of my professional colleagues, Professor David Favor, now retired professor out of Michigan State University School of Law, go Michigan State. He wrote many legal papers on this topic to advocate for an evolution in our laws. And that's what our laws do. They evolve for current times. But this one is not really evolving at the pace that it should. There's a lot of discussion in the field. And I can tell you that through my long-term participation on the steering committee of the National Link Coalition. We talk about this all the time. We get it. Okay, we advocate for legislation. When I led a legislative lobbying office in DC for a national animal protection organization, I was so shocked and stunned to learn that veterinary medical associations and farm bureaus were the primary opponents to animal protection legislation, especially anything that would give sentient rights to animals. I want to tell you that again. The veterinary medical associations that are made up of a membership of veterinarians were opposed to this. I'm not saying all were, but a lot were. And farm bureaus, because they really do not want farm animals being designated as sentient beings. And when I was a lobbyist and I was dealing with this, I always would come out of meetings with the opponents, with legislators, and I would just shake my head. And it's like, why wouldn't you want this? Like, they couldn't really articulate other than, oh, it's a slippery slope. Well, you know what? Everything in life is a slippery slope. Come on, come at me with facts. Why wouldn't we want animals recognized as more than a refrigerator? Maybe we would treat them kinder. Maybe farm animals would be treated more humanely. Everybody wants that, right? So I was really surprised to learn that. And I spent many years advocating for legislation to be passed. And I still do to this day. I still testify in front of legislatures. When animals are treated as property, Courts do not have to consider the welfare or the well-being of the animal because they wouldn't consider the welfare or the well-being of a car, of a refrigerator. They may tell an abuser, you can't go to this home. You can't be near this car, but they're not looking at it from the car or the home's perspective. They're just saying it's property, you can't go near it. So, if a convicted domestic abuser breeds dogs, let's say for the Westminster Dog Show, those dogs would stay with the abuser because they're property of the abuser, and they are property that makes money. The well-being or the welfare of being safe from harm is not a consideration when you're property. Isn't that absurd? Please, in the comments, tell me if you think that this is absurd, because from a perspective as an attorney, this is absurd. We need a shift in our laws to consider the well-being and welfare of animals. So what does it mean to recognize animals as sentient beings? It's a recognition that animals feel pain just like we do. It's a recognition that they experience emotions, fear, stress, like we do. I know my cats experience jealousy. I see it. Yes, I recognize that the law can be slow to evolve. But for any of us with companion animals, we know that Bailey, the dog, is not a refrigerator. My cats should not be treated like property, like my Subaru Forester. They are sentient beings just like you and me, and we need to start pushing to have this addressed. For goodness sakes, it's 2025. We're about ready to flip over to 2026. It is the sentient nature of animals that makes them targets for abusers. It makes them targets in a custody fight. It makes them targets to lure abuse survivors back home. So if you are in a situation where you have a companion animal and you are seeking a protective order, you need to include your pets. Go back to episode 21 and I talk about that. If you are in a situation where you're in court for divorce proceedings that involves custody of kids, custody of pets, or if you are in a situation where the abuser is demanding return of the pet and you do not want that, what can you do? Let me give you some ideas. If you adopted or purchased the pet and the paperwork of that adoption or purchase is in your name, that is good evidence to prove property ownership. It's just like you buying a refrigerator and the receipt is in your name. That is the best evidence to go to court and say, Judge, I bought it. Okay, here's the receipt. Get the receipts. Number two, if you took the pet in question to a veterinarian or to a grooming appointment or any other sort of appointment, and the receipt is in your name, again, that is the best evidence to prove property ownership. Number three, if the pet is licensed with local authorities, like, most dogs have to get a dog license, right? There are some jurisdictions where cats have to be licensed. Is the license in your name? Number four, is the microchip for your pet in your name? If you don't have your pets microchipped, please have that done. But is the microchip in your name? It should be. If you have been the primary caregiver, that helps. Evidence of that helps. And if you don't have any of these, if you don't have any of this in your name, start doing that now. Do that going forward. Get that paperwork in your name. Get the receipts in your name. Just like if you buy a car, you go through a divorce, you don't want your spouse saying, that's my car. You could hold up the receipt and say, sorry, I bought it. Now, yes, you have to go through division of property, but a judge is more likely to award you ownership or custody if everything is in your name. This is important for you to know if you share a pet with a partner, if you work for a domestic violence shelter, if you are a legislator or a lobbyist and you work on animal protection laws, if you are an attorney working on divorce or custody cases, or if you're a family law judge. If you know any of these people, please share this podcast with them. If you work in any of these fields, please share this with your colleagues. And to the survivors out there, your pet is your family. I know this. My cats are my family. In the move that I just made from mid-Michigan to the lakeshore of Michigan, the well-being, the physical and the emotional well-being of my cats was first and foremost. Okay? So to you, I get it. Your pet is like a child that feels pain and feels emotions just like a human child. So when you are thinking of all the reasons why you can't leave an abusive situation and you have a pet, we get it. And that's where I want to talk to the domestic violence shelters. You need to welcome pets on site. I hear from shelters saying all the time, but Allie, we have off-site housing. To the survivors that see pets as family, they are not going to be separated from their pets. You are creating a barrier to safety. And that is contrary to the entire purpose of being a domestic violence agency. So please think about that. Because Bailey is not a refrigerator that can simply be left behind to be bashed with a baseball bat. Sorry to be blunt. If you love animals, what can you do? Connect with your state animal law section. Find out if there's legislation pending in your state. Stay connected with the Animal Legal Defense Fund. They send out action alerts on legislation. Connect with local animal lobbyists. Maybe you have a large animal protection organization in your state. Here in Michigan, we have Michigan Humane Society. They do a great job with legislative alerts. And that's how you can support animal-related legislation, especially legislation supporting the sentient nature of animals. And you can reach out to your legislator and say, hey, you work for me, and this is important to me, and this is how I need you to vote. Okay? All right. I hope this was beneficial. And again, if you like this podcast, please share it. Please subscribe. Please like and donate. Please donate to the SAFeTy program. Okay? We run a tight ship, but we are helping domestic violence shelters all over the world to open their doors to pets. All right. Thanks for joining in, and I'll talk to you next time. If you are in harm's way and need help, please visit the Pet Inclusive Shelter listing at SAFeTyProgram.org, call your nearest domestic violence shelter, or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Want to support our efforts and help us keep the SAFeTy Startup Manual free for domestic violence shelters? Consider donating at SAFeTyProgram.org/donate. Your donation saves lives.